Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, Miss South Africa 2020, Miss Shudufazo Musida, esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen, greetings to you, and I welcome all of you to the third panel discussion of our roundtables on women and energy for the 2020 Africa Energy Indaba, hosted by the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. We had two very informative panel discussions already which focused on renewable energy and women, as well as financial inclusion. The discussions were really heartening. The panel discussion today focuses on best practices on empowering women, youth, and persons with disabilities in the energy sector and across the value chain. One would ask, why are we not only focusing on women? Our department, its mandate is women, youth, and persons with disabilities, all of which are equally disadvantaged in our country. One of the critical areas in the economic sector is that related to energy, which continues to remain male-dominated. Several studies demonstrate the benefits of integrating gender considerations into energy value chain and throughout the power sector. Evidence also shows that when the barriers that prevent women from having equal access to energy and in economic opportunities in the energy sector are removed, significant productivity gains are unlocked, thereby strengthening development and economic outcomes. Additionally, research demonstrates that women are transforming the energy sector in their roles as energy entrepreneurs, innovators, and decision makers when they access the opportunities. Women at the global level play an important role and critical role in growing the economy in different countries. A study by McKinsey Global Institute report found that 12 trillion US dollars, not rands, could be added to global GDP by 2025 by advancing women's empowerment and equality. According to Li Yang, empowering women is empowering humanity. And we will hear from Ms. Shudu's presentation. When women and men are more equal, economies grow faster, more people are lifted out of poverty, and the overall well-being of societies is enhanced. Women are a powerful economic driver when they are meaningfully involved in the economy through entrepreneurial activities and employment in decision-making, because it matters who sits on the table. It matters who makes the decisions. Evidence has shown in developed and developing economies that when more women join the labor force, in particular become entrepreneurs, there is a rise in gross domestic product because they are intentional. Women, when they go into certain positions, they're intentional in terms of what they want to achieve. Women have always been instrumental in our country's advancement. They played a crucial role in the struggle and ushering in of our new democratic order in South Africa. These examples show that we could learn more by drawing from the best practices from those that have benefited directly or indirectly from empowerment initiatives locally and abroad. We can equally learn from companies and individuals who have played a role in empowering others, or other companies, as well as initiatives from our own government departments. This is the main objective of this panel discussion, to look at the best practices and the bad practices, which we will hear from the Competition Commission in empowering women in the energy value chain. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to participate and follow on our journey as we look at best practices in empowerment of women, youth, and persons with disabilities across the value chain. I wish you a fruitful deliberation. Thank you very much. Enkosi. Thank you very much. Now I will introduce our keynote address speaker. I'm excited to have her here. We have power here. Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka is the current Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg. She was a member of the first South African democratically elected parliament in 1994. First as the Deputy Minister in the Department of Trade and Industry between 1994 and 1996, and as Minister of Minerals and Energy, 1999 to 2005. She had unparalleled impact. This is my contribution. This is my input. She had unparalleled impact to date as Deputy Minister and Minister. She later became the Deputy President of South Africa, 2005 to 2008, the highest ranking female political leader in the history of the country. During her period as Deputy President of South Africa, she oversaw programs to combat poverty and ensure the poor benefit from the advantages of a growing economy. Throughout her illustrious political career, she directed her energy towards issues of human rights, equality, and social justice, with a specific emphasis on gender and youth development. She has a track record of giving back to her communities dating back to pre-1994 years when she was a teacher and a lecturer. She continued in this vein when she moved to Geneva, where she took up the position of coordinator of the World YCWA, a grassroots-driven global movement rooted in the leadership of women, youth, and young women and girls. While in this role, she established a program for young women from 1984 to 1989, among others. Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka was appointed as the UN Under-Secretary General and Executive Director of the UN Women in 2013. As the head of the UN Nations entity that is dedicated to gender equality and the empowerment of women, she was a global advocate for women and girls. She led the organization's innovative work on transforming social inequalities and discriminatory norms with initiatives such as the He for She movement, driving men and boys engagement in gender equality, the UN Stereotype Alliance initiative influencing advertising norms for positive change and equal representation, and helped countries to change hundreds of laws that discriminate against women and girls. Her profile is longer than this, but you can Google her. You can go to the website here. You will find more about our stalwart, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Advocate. Thank you for having me. And good afternoon, fellow panelists. It's wonderful to see you, and I look forward to hearing from you. I would just like to paint a broad picture about the energy situation we are all in, especially in South Africa. As we all know, energy is one of the basic inputs for developing our economies, as well as driving our social activity. Every country needs a security of supply. Without that security of supply, life becomes difficult. In South Africa, we are in that crunch of having lost our security of supply. Energy is needed for industrial development, for our health needs, for our rural development, for our technological advancement, for our health needs. So truly, life is just unimaginable without an adequate supply of energies. For as long as I have been engaged with the energy sector, the issue of diversifying our supply mix has always been important. I remember for us in South Africa, we were pushing for this diversifying of our supply. But at that time, the issue of climate change was not as critical as it is now. Our push for going for clean energy, as much as we needed to invest a lot of time, we actually had a security of supply. So we were not doing this while our lights were off. But of course, that time has now passed. Countries have their energy mix based on what the country can afford because of their geographical locations. Countries who are in places that have mountains, for instance, in northern hemisphere, where mountains freeze and in summer mountains melt, they are able to use a lot of hydroelectric power because they are able to collect a lot of water. Countries who have coal, and I think in some ways we are not as fortunate as we've always believed. We are stuck with electricity that is generated from coal, which makes it cheaper for us, but is not sustainable and is not what we need for the future, where we require clean energy. So renewable energy has become a critical need for us, and I think that's where women have to make their presence felt. Just like technology, renewable energy is a relatively new field. I think it is important that women do not miss out on this industry. We need to make sure that we make our presence felt. At this time in South Africa, there is a bit of a rollback on policies that empower the disadvantaged. The weakening of the ANC has also meant the weakening of empowerment policies. So I think if I were to be realistic, I don't think that we have to absolutely believe there will be empowerment that is given. We've always needed to strengthen ourselves as women so that we can participate effectively. But without empowerment, the need for us to take our space on our own mental becomes even critical. Now, the energy mix of South Africa right now is nuclear, which is around 4%, electricity generated from coal, which is about 69%, petroleum, which is about 14%, renewables, which is also only 11%. And these figures may change if you fine tune, but it's more or less spread out like this. So you can see there's a good opportunity for women to enter into the renewables energy space. In the same way that we've distributed the energy that we've used, we can think of how we are going to position women in the value chain for the energy supply. We have generation, which right now is what is in a crisis because of problems with power stations, the management, and so on. So we need to address the issue of generation of energy, and we can generate energy from renewables. We can build solar farms and wind farms. We can manufacture the gadgets, the solar panels that we need. And in all these, there are lots and lots of jobs for women. We can plant trees for biodiesel fuel. and we can then generate energy from biodiesel. And of course, trees are also important. They contribute in our management of our environment. The falling leaves fertilize the soil that they fall on. So again, there's a cluster of jobs there that are waiting for women. If we are given land, let's hope the land reform process moves on. There is a good space for women to make an entry into this and use that opportunity to generate energy. And then, of course, there's the distribution of energy. South Africa has extensive distribution channels for energy. It can not only be used for the energy that is generated from coal, it can also be used for energy that comes from other sources of energy. It's a bit more complicated because you have to make a bit of agreements with Eskom, etc. But it is worth trying and thinking about. And that is where you generate energy and then sell it to Eskom so that they can distribute it through their grid. And lastly, you can then retail energy from the grid into the homes of people. But with renewable energy, you can also have your own substations, smaller substations in a village where you generate the energy and you retail it to the communities that you retail in. Make your energy, bring it to a firm if you are in the industrial space. And that, again, opens lots of possibilities for women. There is an organization in India which just specializes on training women on different ways of generating renewable energy, something that we can think about. I think there are a few South African women who have gone to that training and they came back and they started their own substations. And of course, we also can think about the jobs that you can create from the maintenance of the whole infrastructure. Again, that requires women to organize themselves. That requires youth in particular to organize themselves. And disabled people can also play a role in directing this energy. They can be in the managerial space for management of energy. And of course, they can also benefit from the energy that is going to be generated. So we're in a difficult time as a country, but we have opportunities. I don't think that you should give hope, but we have to act fast because it actually is quite worrying. It is one thing that could cripple our country in a very drastic way. And our involvement is needed there as women. And it's something that I hope we could hear from you, what your take is and how ready are we to step in and make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. We have heard you. We are definitely going to come to you for further assistance. Thank you so much. Thank you. The history and the background that you've given us. Thank you so much. Without wasting time, I would like to introduce our moderator, Ms. Betha Dlamini. Betha Dlamini, my apology. She's an advocate for accelerated participation of African women and youth in Africa's power and energy sector. She is the founding president of African Women in Energy and Power, an initiative she founded to accelerate the participation of African women entrepreneurs in the full value chain of power and energy in Africa, and contribute towards addressing the continent's energy poverty. The organization has 11 chapters in Africa. In March 2021, AWEP won the WVL SADC Protocol Climate Change Award in recognition of its outstanding contribution in the promotion of gender equity in the energy and power sector. She is an executive member of the BRICS Business Women Alliance, South Africa, where she is responsible for the energy security portfolio. She serves on the advisory board of UNISA Graduate School of Business Leadership. She is currently the recipient of the following awards: the inaugural South African Institute of Electrical Engineers 2019 Women in Engineering Award, African Queens in Energy, the Judges Award, supporting women entrepreneurs in energy and power, a finalist for the Women of Stature CEO of the Year Award. Thank you very much. As indicated, we have power with us here today. I will not introduce the panelists. She will introduce the panelists and she will indicate how the panel discussion will roll out. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, DG, for that humbling introduction. And thank you, Dr. Mlambo-Ngcuka, for you setting the context on the role of energy in our economy, the role of energy in industry, and the opportunities that are emerging that set the foundation for women to organize themselves to participate. Today, we're going to discuss best practice on empowering women, youth, and persons with disabilities in the energy sector and its value chains. When we talk about best practice, we are talking about frameworks, we are talking about toolkits, we're talking about heuristics that have been benchmarked against other practices, either in the world or in other industries that have yielded results. And today we're going to explore what those best practices are. Best practices are executed by people, and therefore we also need to look at management practices that ensure the execution of such best practices. Our panel is composed of leading women who look at gender mainstreaming and gender equity in industry from different perspectives. This afternoon, we're going to have a conversation on their varied perspectives on how best the energy sector can integrate profitably the participation of women as owners of productive assets, as leaders in industry. One area that I would like to highlight to set the context is the following. The World Bank issued a report in 2015 that was setting the standard for development policies across the world. It stated the following: individuals are not calculating automatons. They are not automatic entities. Rather, they are malleable, emotional actors whose decision-making is influenced by contextual cues, local social networks, and social norms and shared mental models. These shared mental models play a role in determining what individuals perceive as desirable, possible, and even thinkable for their lives. And so as we explore best practice and management practices, especially that they are driven by individuals who are not automatic entities, we have to consider what influences what is possible in our sector. Gender mainstreaming suggests a study that was conducted in 2008 suggested that gender mainstreaming was a highly contested area in organizations, especially, that there are people that have an inclination to think that gender neutrality is more plausible, where talent and merit are all that matters in projects and careers. And I often hear it in the energy sector where people say projects are not going to be awarded to women for simply being women. You have to show that you have earned the project. You have to show that you have the competency. This approach limits gender challenge from considering the structural powers and the structural power differences that underlie organizational cultures and structures. It is important to highlight this because it affects how we perceive best practices and how we perceive initiatives that ensure gender equity. With those words, I would like to introduce our first commentator, which will be Ms. Shudufatso Museda, Miss South Africa 2020, currently representing the country in the auspicious Miss World Beauty pageant. And my question to you is, with the initiatives that you are pursuing, to what extent do you believe that mental models and belief systems influences the execution of gender mainstreaming initiatives in industry?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to speak on the mental models that do affect this industry in a great way. When I go home to my village in Abangani in Venda, I'm amazed by the women under the trees cooking in giant pots over wood fires. It's the rural way, and although I'm constantly being told that things are 100% better than they were in my grandmother's day, I'm still appalled. Just to think what it takes to build that fire under that pot, under that tree, and the trees that have been chopped up and carried to the village, denuding the countryside of shade and of possible greenery that gives life-giving oxygen. Then those fires often burn, those fires are often made inside huts or homes that cause wood smoke to hurt eyes and lungs. And people then do not equate renewable energy with women and mental health issues. A friend told me about her recent trip to monitor an election in Sierra Leone. She was sent there to the remote Kono district to a town called Kyoto. There she was astonished to learn that only 6% of homes are electrified and the rest rely on wood-burning fuel. This country has one of the lowest electricity access rates in the world, and the national electrification rate is approximately 26%. South Africa is lauded for having some of the most progressive laws and policies intended to advance women's rights and gender equality. However, women continue to be disproportionately affected by poverty, unemployment, and hunger, and a lack of access to energy that could help ease some of the physical burden of seeking, chopping, and carrying and making of these fires. So I'd like to raise a critically important point. Where are the women who are active participants in what has been and still is the oil and energy sector? How many women have entered what has until now been a male-dominated industry? What will it take for women to enter the renewable energy sector, and how can we help facilitate that? I think that we are here to discuss ways to help women break through the barriers that exist in the renewable energy program and its value chains. I believe that we need to do everything in our power, everything we can in our power to empower women, to relieve them of the burden of having to rely on their own physicality to provide energy and therefore food, heat, and comfort for their families. I've been running Mindful Mondays talks for about a year now, dealing with issues that affect mental health. And one of the most recurring themes is how feeling powerless and helpless leads to hopelessness. Women are particularly susceptible to these feelings of feeling unworthy or less than, feeling like we have to work twice as hard to prove our capabilities and to be held in equal regard to our male counterparts. Women work so hard that they forget to acknowledge their own brilliance and the pivotal role that they play in society. According to research, women are nearly twice as likely as men to suffer from mental illness. This gender disparity in depressive disorders may relate to social inequalities and reduced living standards across nations. Research continues to highlight how the overt social and economic inequalities more commonly experienced by women, such as lower rates of schooling and employment, less pay for similar jobs, and underrepresentation in leadership positions, especially in male-dominated spaces such as the energy sector, and the high level of psychosocial stresses and problems from caregiving burden to intimate partner violence all contribute to these disparities. If women are to be game changers, thought leaders, if we are to take, or better yet, create our own seat at the table in these sectors, it begins with being in balance. There can only be gender equality when society at large changes the narratives that exist around women and their mental health in a patriarchal society. Women are still overrepresented in informal and precarious work arrangements, including at the bottom of the global supply chains, which now command 60% of global production, transport, and services. Partnerships and collaborative approach for promotion of gender-inclusive solutions to ensure renewable energy is important. Literature has shown that partnerships and collaborative approaches have resulted in positive outputs and outcomes for women-owned entrepreneurs in the energy sector, both locally and internationally, with evidence on the importance of a woman's role in energy value chains. Lessons could be gleaned from companies and institutions that have partnered with women-owned and led companies to promote their growth and participation in the energy sector value chain. For human development to come about and economic development too, Projects in the energy sector value chain need to prioritize gender equality by addressing issues such as barriers to entry for women in the sector through the prioritization of human security, namely economic security, through the increase of women's access to income-generating economic opportunities in the oil and energy sector and employment. This promotes inclusive development, greater diversity and productivity, improved welfare for families, improved corporate public perception of firms as gender champions. This needs to be done while acknowledging the challenges that women face in the sector that may negatively impact their mental health due to the patriarchal nature of the sector and the lack of access thereof that may lead to feelings of discouragement, which may negatively impact their economic success. It is important to empower women and their minds through the prioritization of their education and provision of skills and competencies and development of women entrepreneurs in the sector. And that those are the mental models that I think should be adapted. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that broad perspective into best practices that are feasible for the energy sector. I see you have shared your view of borrowing from other sectors that have already executed gender mainstreaming initiatives and succeeded to improve what is possible in the energy sector. Just leading forward from your comment, the industry working together to remove barriers to entry for women in energy. I want to invite Ms. Khanyisa Ngcobo, who is with the Competition Commission. She is the Manager Advocacy. Ms. Khanyisa, the question I have for you, and following on Ms. Moseda's commentary, how can we harness institutional commitment to equitable participation of women in our economy? What, in your view, has worked, and what do you think the energy sector can emphasize?
Good afternoon, fellow panelists. Thank you for your question, Bertha. I mean, this is such a critical theme. It's a human rights issue, that it does warrant that all organs of the state and of society, utilize the instruments in tackling these issues. What we are seeing just even across the world is that the issue of gender is becoming, this is now with other authorities, competition authorities. There is a greater recognition of these issues in the way we approach enforcement and advocacy work. I'm just going to touch on some of the issues that we have observed as the competition authority, in the last few years in this regard. I do have a presentation which I can share afterwards, but I'm battling to move the slides at this stage. So within the Competition Act of South Africa, there is a provision for what is called public interest. And essentially, we are obligated in the course of merger assessments, for example, to consider the impact of such a merger on historically disadvantaged individuals, which by definition would include women, along with youth, the disabled, Black persons, and so on. And this is now framed in the law in such a way that we can actually consider public interest issues exclusively outside of competition. And so we can prohibit a merger, as we have done, having exercised this law, just on the grounds that it may be harmful to historically disadvantaged individuals, even if that merger makes sense from a competition perspective. And so I think it is really important that where such powers or tools exist, that institutions do use them. Equally for exemptions, women-owned businesses can come together and applied to the commission to get permission to coordinate their commercial or economic activities, and essentially applied to be exempted from prosecution of cartel conduct. This is provided for in the law, and under these circumstances, within the Act, it talks about the promotion of the effective entry, participation, or expansion within a market, by SMEs or firms controlled or owned by historically disadvantaged women. And then equally, in the way we think about enforcement, when we design remedies, when we are prosecuting, we do look at whether we can also, put in solutions to the problem beyond just the financial penalty that may be imposed by the tribunal or the courts. And so often these remedies, we do keep in mind then, gender dynamics amongst other considerations. But I would like, just with time permitting, to perhaps share a project that we launched last year, which zoomed in on women in business, in particular in the various barriers to entry and participation within the South African economy. So we launched this project last year, and we held a first workshop with businesswomen associations chambers of commerce and industry, and really got a synopsis of the big picture issues that businesswomen are facing. We had another session later in the year with sectoral women from different sectors, or sectorial dialogue. And then later we then undertook a survey, which we rolled out then to women who are in business. And the themes, which just, learning then from all of these interactions, we picked up 5 main themes, which we want to, deep dive in the next few years, and maybe share our learnings also with other organs of state. And we will be publicizing this research in the next few weeks. One of those is access to knowledge, education, information, and training programs. That's category 1. Access to finance, of course, is a theme that came through, which we wanted to test also. It came through in the engagements we had. And then access to markets, but not just access to markets, but to profitable markets. We looked at compliance requirements, bureaucracy and administration. And we also tested the issue of access to networks. These are support structures for women. I'll perhaps just share the preliminary findings in some of these on these 5 categories. We had over 300 respondents, mostly women of color between 30 and 45 years. We found that many of the sample we used of the respondents were in services sectors, and less in kind of widgets or not nuts and bolts type of sector. So they were in catering, customer service, events, decoration, and this is a nationwide survey. And we found very few women in so-called hard labor sectors, such as construction and mining. On the issue of access to knowledge and education, though the sample of our respondents had tertiary education, the bulk of them did not have business-specific information. So it was a lot of self-learning that they were able to enter, the market. And so the issue then of training and education was, flagged as a point that limits their participation. And they indicated that they gave a whole list of reasons about why there is lack of participation around this theme of education or knowledge, which even includes, for example, the costs of training programs or the time consumption, because many women are also carrying the burden, social burdens, whether it's taking care of their domestic responsibilities. The second theme of access to finance, again, here we found, I suppose, as would be expected, that access to finance was difficult, but we zoomed in also on the role of development finance institutions like the NEF, DBSA, IDC, and very few of our sample had actually found finance through those mediums. And they often had to bootstrap using either their own savings, partner, friends, and family to start up their businesses. And the main reason, they said, was that there was lack of collateral or a good credit record. On access to profitable markets, again, it was interesting that very few of our sample do business with government. And so many of them are, their clients are in the private sector, which I think is perhaps a cause for reflection given the drive to have, I think it was even part of the economic recovery plan that 40% of procurement should be on infrastructure should be going to women-owned businesses. Yet, you're seeing a different trend here. They talked obviously about the various routes they use to access markets, which would be the standard, marketing, the standard routes to get there. But there was a whole list of reasons given about how this area could be improved. And the theme of compliance and bureaucracy, we found that most of the sample, the respondents, had self-registered and had found the process easy. I think that's the CIPC registration. But they had to use third-party intermediaries to do so, which we thought was interesting. I think half were using that and the other half were just registered online. But there are also a category of respondents who said that they didn't register their business for various reasons. Registration is expensive, tax charges, it's time consuming, and or lack of knowledge about business registration. So when we are talking about issues then of economic participation, you probably have, as we may know even anecdotally, entire segment of business women who may not be captured through the formal systems. I'm going to be just concluding by saying that they did give indication about what they deem to be success factors, and we'll be able to share that once we publish the study. But with COVID-19 and businesses being negatively affected, it's all the more important to ensure that obviously the economy recovers, but in that recovery, we don't go back to business as usual, but it's an opportune time, to reconfigure and reprioritize, elements of our economy to ensure that we build a more resilient economy, and bringing women to the fore is, the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bertha.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just listening to you and listening to the themes that you listed, I can deduce that your recommendation is to take a multidimensional approach to the challenge of ensuring women's participation in industry. You have spoken to access to markets, access to finance, access to skills development, ways of ensuring that compliance is easy and cost effective for first-time players in industry. Just to follow on, I'm looking to get more examples in terms of what has worked in the energy sector. And I'm going to bring Ms. Shelley Smith, who is the CEO of Afrishore Oil and Gas. Ms. Shelley, I would like you to just share with us an example of an initiative or a project or an example of what you have seen working in the sector when it comes to integrating women's participation, either as entrepreneurs or supporting them to gain leading positions in corporate?
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, moderator and fellow panelists. Thank you for the opportunity. Certainly, it's important to state that we are located in Mossel Bay, which traditionally is the only sector in the oil and gas space in South Africa where we've seen ongoing exploration activity and later further production activity. And moderator, to answer your question, I'm going to use the most recent Total project. Now, in the President's State of the Nation address at the beginning of the year, the significance of the Brolpada-Leipert-Pada exploration program by TEPSA was announced, as this was of national significance. Our company, a locally owned company, I started this company from really humble beginnings as actually a school teacher. And many of the ladies that are appointed in our company certainly did not come with the correct background as such. In fact, one or two were appointed by virtue of being mothers of multiple children. And it never proved to be an incorrect model, because with that resilience as a mom, that carried through in the business world. And our company, a locally owned company, was up against many multinationals in the logistics space. And we really put up our hands, and we are very grateful that we positioned our approach to industry on finding local solutions on the ground by people that know the South African domestic market, know where to get products and get it to client with the utmost of speed. And in doing this, I'd like to use an incredible example where on the hillside in Mossel Bay are many children, and they see the ocean on a daily basis as they go to school. But they are not aware of the need and the requirement, and in actual fact, the task at hand of the vessel that they see on the ocean. And in this way, the mayor of Mossel Bay had a tertiary education program for children that were in need. And he asked me if I would look for opportunity for a young lady that lived up on that hill. And I had this very shy girl approach me in my office. And a beautiful young lady. And my first words to her were, "This is such a male-dominated industry. Are you really going to be able to manage?" Her response was, "Ma'am, I was raised by my grandparents. And every day I jumped in the bakkie with my dad and went to the construction site. And on grounds of that, I appointed her." My best practice initiative was to take male expertise that was almost at retirement level and actually match them up with young ladies from our area. And part of their appointment requirements was a skills transfer program. And this ran really successfully. This young lady that I speak of is now 27 years old and the only educated jetty supervisor for the oil and gas sector in South Africa. She was able to absorb and learn because that was her mindset. And so certainly I think from a best practice initiative, we need to educate our children. We need to show them the opportunities. There is so much ignorance, and I speak as an ex-school teacher, where children really do not know about renewable energy. They know the word, but they do not know of the varied opportunities within those sectors. And it is our responsibility as leaders, and I feel very responsible as an older CEO who really had to fight a very, very tough, dominated male environment to bring these opportunities to our children, to our youth, that they know what streams they can follow on multiple levels. I also believe that it is our responsibility where we have established ourselves in this industry, and there are women, but there are fewer women that have made it to the upper ranks in the energy sector currently as we speak. We know the operational challenges. Panelists, I implore you that so many regulations and opportunities are available, funding is available, but the reality is that our business women on the ground cannot access these opportunities. There's a local lady in Mlambo-Ngcuka in Mossel Bay. She wishes to make safety gear for the oil and gas and energy sector, but the financing absolutely hamstrings her. And we have a responsibility in business to take hands with people that have shown the initiative and the absolute willingness. And in this way, find an opportunity for her to be able to make all the viz vests, to be able to get access to market. And so in a small way, we have helped with financing where we afford credit to women trying to establish SMMEs and walk that road, extend that credit, because she is not able to attract a bank loan or even more substantial loan to be able to get her business off the ground. So from an educational level to a support level at grassroots, we really need to see how we can make a difference. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Actually, your testimony and sharing of your story ties in with what Dr. Mlambo-Ngcuka said about women standing up and preparing themselves. And I can actually see that you are advocating for women to operate as an ecosystem of support to ensure that no one is left behind as we look at different opportunities that are emerging in these value chains, such as safety gear, which is an element of a value chain, may not be pronounced, but it's still a productive sector. Recently, the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy launched the Women Empowerment and Gender Equality Strategy. Today, we have Ms. Winnie Mamatsaraga, who is from the department, and she's responsible for gender mainstreaming and transformation in the department. And I would like Ms. Winnie to talk to us about the ambitions of the strategy launched by the department and how it can contribute in fostering best practice in supporting women-owned companies in the energy and power sector. Ms. Winnie, you are muted. If you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Betha. Fellow panelists, all protocols observed. The study by International Energy Agency technical study in November 2019, where they were profiling 7 successful founders and entrepreneurs, found that all these entrepreneurs that were successful, they share common personal characteristics, which are passion and persistence. And that is one thing that is needed for women in South Africa who are aspiring or who wants to join the energy, particularly renewable energy sector. They found that they face similar barriers, which is securing funding, building partnership, educating stakeholders about their technologies and services. And then they proposed key actions to close those gaps: targeted funding, access to network, supportive policies for gender equality. And that is one thing that we as the Department of Mineral Resources Energy decided to go ahead and develop the strategy for women empowerment and gender equality strategy in the energy sector. And this was also called, this came also after we moved around the provinces, informing women about opportunities in the energy sectors and how to access them in partnership with different stakeholders like funding institutions, development agencies, and other relevant institutions. So I would like to concur with the study by Mekanyisa from Competition Commission to say, indeed, those are the main challenges that we realized when we were moving around, and some of them voiced them out. And then we decided to develop the strategy. Though we know that there were different policies, regulations, and framework, but we thought we should develop the one that is relevant to our sector. And then from there, after developing the strategy, we also realized that, as she indicated, that there is also lack of, not only lack of information, but they need a networking platform or a platform to share information. That's where we developed the Women in Energy Business Directory. The directory is there, and the women are encouraged to register their businesses there. This directory is helping us to be able to share information whenever we have information about opportunities, information about access to funding, and other relevant information. As Betha indicated, in last year, 2021, our Minister Gwede Mantashe launched the strategy, and then above the strategy, we also developed the implementation plan so that it can serve as our vehicle to implement the strategy. So, and then from there, we also realized that we cannot do this alone. We need our soldiers. And then the minister then appointed the Gender Ministerial Council. The council is there, it's representative of all sectors from different corners. And then what is expected of them is to ensure that they drive the implementation of the strategy and then report back to the minister and come up with interventions where it's not working. And then that will serve also as our way forward, and when we monitor and evaluate whether the strategy is working or not. So that is what we have done in relation to strategy, to ensure that in the energy sector, the environment is enabling, there are equal opportunities, it is barrier-free, and then also everything is being mainstreamed. And then what are our ambitions, as Mem Dlamini has indicated? We want to see gender equality, we want to see enterprise development, employment of women in the energy sector, women owning businesses in the energy sector, women providing services in the energy sector, and having access to market and access to finance. What is it that we have used that we are going to use to achieve all this? We have got 4 critical pillars, which are capacity development. That's where we indicate we're gonna be aligned with the report by Competition Commission to say that capacity development is needed. We cannot just put women there and say, here are the opportunities, without developing them and showing them ropes on how to go about. That will be able to include either women in the employment sector or in the business sector. So we also start this from the lower level to our young girls by giving bursaries and encourage them to study or to take careers in the energy sector, so that at the end of the day, they join the energy sector. So the second pillar is organizational development, where we should ensure that there are resources provided, just like gender budgeting, ensure that women are being lifted to higher levels, because we know that there are benefits in having women in the executive level or even at the board level. We also facilitate the development of the Women in Energy database. And then one other thing that we have done as a department, after the call by the president of 40% budget, we have got our project integrated national electrification program, where we have indicated that whatever the amount or the budget that we allocate to the municipalities and ESCOM to electrify the country, they must make sure that there's a certain amount goes to women, and we are monitoring that. The other pillar that we are going to use to achieve this strategy is the governance and institutional development mechanism, where we ensure that all our programs, projects, and policies in the department are gender aligned or gender mainstreamed. That is where we also included the issue of the ministerial council. And then we can also do this through the studies that we are conducting together with the women, the South African Wind Association, the South African Photovoltaic Association, and other preliminary studies that were done, so that we can also check if we are, from where we are coming from, how many women that are there already employed, how many women that are there doing business in the energy sector, and how can we improve this. So that is one of the pillars that that is going to help us. We have the last pillar, which is economic growth and development. This is the one that now we are focusing on women outside, and how do they get those opportunities? How do we partner with different stakeholders to encourage them so that they can give money to women to do business in the energy sector? We also have our IPP program, where we encourage socio-economic development obligations, where they are encouraged that whatever they do, wherever they have the projects, they must show that they develop their surrounding 50 kilometers radius. And then even when they develop them, they must look into empowering women, youth, and people with disabilities. We also encourage women to develop their association. And I forgot to mention that with all these roadshows that we are doing, we do it in partnership with different women associations. There are already so many associations that are in the energy sector, starting from Mugusa, where we moved around with them, but at least there are also other ones that are particular, like the one for renewable energy, energy efficiency, nuclear. So we do that in partnership with them, so that we can encourage other women to join the energy sector. And then how will this strategy foster best practices? So I've indicated the 4 pillars of the work strategy, the capacity buildings that we are doing. Just for example, after the work sessions.
Sorry to interject you. I just have a time pressure. We've already passed the time when we were going to end our discussion. So I'm sorry to interject. If you just want to wrap up in 30 seconds, please.
Okay, capacity building, and then just to enforce the implementation of the strategy. Just yesterday, we had a session with the CEOs where we encouraged them to commit to implementing the strategy, and then it went very well. So we are going all out to other sectors as well. The one for yesterday were for renewable energy. We are going to SAPIA, the one for petroleum, to nuclear, to all these associations and the executives, to ensure that they help. They hold hands with us so that they can implement the strategy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I must apologize. We were supposed to conclude at 4:07, but the insights that have come through from all the panelists were quite useful. Ms. Shudufatso Museda has already left us. She had a time constraint, but the DG, I think you have received quite a lot of insights from looking at gender mainstreaming at a multidimensional level, looking at the mental models that influence management practices, to looking at structural issues that need to be considered at an industry level. Ms. Khanyisa spoke about how the commission looks at mergers and acquisitions, the study that they have commissioned that looks at different aspects that affects women's participation. You had a beautiful testimony from Ms. Shelley talking about how to support women's participation at grassroots level and to create an ecosystem of support. Ms. Winnie has illustrated quite a number of initiatives that are embedded in the Women's Empowerment and Gender Equality Strategy. We can then conclude that we don't have a single framework that can be recommended for the energy sector, but we've got a number of aspects that we can put together to benchmark with other markets and to ensure that we accelerate the participation of women. Dr. Mlambo-Ngcuka has highlighted the importance of the sector in our economy and its evolution. Some value chains are still emerging. Therefore, we need to act fast as women, as a collective, to go after the opportunities, even if empowerment initiatives are not available. From me, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to moderate, and I hope that the insights you've received from the panelists have set the foundation for your department to take the initiatives forward. Over to you, DG.
Thank you very much for moderating this dialogue so well. Thank you very much to all the speakers, Dr. Mlambo-Ngcuka in her absence now, Shudu, and everyone who's presented here. Shelley, thank you so much. Winnie, thank you so much. Kanyisa, thank you so much. Everyone who's here, thank you so much. This is not the last time. This is the first that we meet. This is the first time that the department participates in the Energy Indaba in this format. This is not the last time. We will be participating in future. However, the dialogues will continue even outside the Energy Indaba. We are definitely going to follow up on the issues that have been raised. We will work together continuously with DMRE. We will work together with Shelley also to ensure that more young people are trained. Thank you very much.